So, here we are for Nas Part 2. So, just to recap, we had 15 albums to get through. We have gone through 15 to number 8. So, we are now at number 7 on our list. So, for number 7, we go to I Am. So, as we discussed before, I Am was initially supposed to be a double disc release. It was eventually released, about a month or two delay, in May of 1999, as a single disc, with the majority of the material being that hadn't leaked being retained for this album, along with some additional songs that were not recorded with the purpose of the initial concept of the album. So initially the album was supposed to be more of the full title was I Am the Autobiography, so it was going to take more of an autobiographical look at Nas, sort of from birth. In fact, I think it would have started. So, again, from the sort of track listing that was leaked, I believe that the first disc would have been fairly close to the story that's told on this album. Then the second disc would have kind of seen Nas being reborn and going through his life again from birth to sort of prominence in the end. Again, not entirely certain about how that initial concept would have gone. This is just from what I've been able to sort of gather from stuff that I've seen. But yeah, from the album as it stands from on here, it's it is kind of a mixed bag overall. I think I kind of prefer maybe like the idea of like the actual idea of what the album could have been is perhaps stronger than the album itself, but there's certainly some very strong tracks on here still. We have a nice intro that begins with kind of gets little snippets of Nas's kind of hits up until that point from Illmatic and I Am, leading into it was written leading into I Am. A bit of a unnecessary speaking between his brother Jungle, I believe it is, and one of the other horse of Bravehearts. This then leads into New York State of Mind Part 2, the sequel of sorts to his initial New York State of Mind track from Illmatic. Obviously, it's a bit of a tricky track to try and follow. It does well enough. It's a bit more of a lighter beat, even though it's quite similar to the initial New York State of Mind beat, and follows a very kind of similar structure of two fairly long verses. But it's difficult to kind of match the legacy of the initial track. We then move on to Hate Me Now, which is sort of like the big major single for the album, which wasn't part of the initial album concept. Again, a bit more of a commercial grab for the purpose of putting the album out. But I actually think this is one of Nas's stronger singles, just because it is a very triumphant sounding beat with the classical overall choice sample, Puff Daddy featuring with some ad-libs on there to kind of help the triumphalism of the track, which Puff did very well at that kind of time. The song itself was kind of inspired by Puff Daddy's own victory from No Way Out. And Nas just sounds really aggressive and defiant on this track, something more so than many of his other songs. So it's kind of good to hear this side of him, kind of in the face of all the haters towards him. I think it's a nice turn. So yeah, then after that again, it's a bit up and down. We have another one of the highlights is in terms of a track that wasn't initially supposed to be on the album, but still kind of helps it. I feel You Won't See Me Tonight, a collaboration with Aaliyah, produced by Timbaland. Again, a more of a commercial sounding song, but this does kind of break up the album a bit, and they have some good chemistry together. Leah sounds really good on the track. It's a beat that serves both of them fairly well. It's not too difficult for Nas to go over. Oops, I banged the table. How much I like the song. So this is one of the stronger tracks for me, I feel. We Will Survive, a bit more of a sample driven track, looking at the deaths of Tupac and Biggie and the effects on hip hop and the New York community in terms of Biggie. This kind of plants the seeds a bit for the Jay-Z feud. Ghetto Prisoners, so kind of a very similar looking streets triumphalism kind of track. I Want to Talk to You as well. It's kind of has a similar kind of looking at out the states of New York, America's ghettos, and looking to the US government to try and help, then try and care about the conditions that those people are going through. Life Is What You Make It with DMX, a nice collaboration between the pair of them. Dr. Knockboot is one of the weaker tracks on the album. It's a sort of given as a do's and don'ts of sexual conduct. I mean, at the best of times, Nas and sex songs go together like vodka and milk. And yeah, this is a track that was, I don't believe, supposed to be part of the initial album concept, and this is one that certainly doesn't help the album at all. There was Big Things, which is called to have a more of a faster paced track, almost a kind of UK garage sound to it, and here Nas have a more rapid fire flow to the track, but other than that doesn't add too much to the album. Then we go on to the DJ Premier produced Nas Is Like, which is more of a sort of standard Primo and Nas collaboration, just going with bars. Then we move to for the final sort of act of the album, Kissing, Money Is My Bitch, and Undying Love, which kind of tells a little bit of like the end tale of the initial story of falling in love, using money as a symbolism, and love as the symbolism for the love of money, and kind of comparing that between the relationship between a woman and the wealth. And then Undying Love, which tells a very cinematic tale of Nas finding his lover in bed with someone else, and then going back and committing murder and suicide on a very dark end to the tale, kind of broken slightly by the police finding them at the end, and some little racial jibes at the end there. But still, it's a strong end to the album. Again, the cinematic nature of the track, which Nas always does fairly well. So yeah, while there are certainly tracks that aren't too strong, and maybe are done better in other parts of Nas's catalog, I still do have a bit of a soft spot for the album, and overall, I think it's strong enough to go through. So overall, stronger than the ones that are before it. So yeah, I think it's, even though it's kind of like the middle section of this ranking has kind of fluctuated a bit, I feel fairly strongly that I Am belongs this high on the track list, on the ranking. So number 6, The Lost Tapes. So released in September 2002, again consisting of a lot of the tracks that were cut from the initial version of I Am, as well as just some additional songs that were recorded around that kind of period. So tracks such as Papa Was a Player, with the hidden track Fetus, which looks at Nas being in his mother's womb, about to be born. A very sort of telling track of what the initial version of I Am was going to be like. Papa Was a Player, looking at his relationship between his father and his father's sort of extramarital affairs, and being away from home, touring and that kind of thing. So yeah, well, and a lot of tracks are kind of just are not necessarily that heavily concept based, but just have a sort of just overall look at things, just an introspective look at the world, and Nas, and in his career, how he got to the point where he is now, and certainly lyrically they're still very strong. The beats are very typical of that underground New York style. Alchemist appears on there for a couple of tracks, which is one of the ways that kind of helps bring him to prominence in terms of hip hop production. So yeah, while it is still kind of just a bunch of tracks thrown together, they're all pretty strong tracks. So yeah, and it would have been interesting, and say just to hear how they would have all worked together on the original version of I Am. Still would have been interesting to hear. Perhaps that actual version of the album with these tracks on it would have been stronger than both of these albums put together. And of course, Lost Tapes isn't technically an album. It's not a studio album. It's just a collection of tracks, but a very strong collection of tracks. I mean, Black Zombie, looking at black stereotypes and how people fall into them. No Ideas original, Nothing Lasts Forever. My Way. There's some again, some really really strong tracks on there, even though there isn't perhaps a balance of different sounds and styles on there. It's still a very strong collection of tracks. So yeah, it's stronger overall than a lot of Nas's proper albums. So yeah, definitely a strong, worthy collection to release. So now we enter the top 5. Right. So number 5, we're going to go Hip Hop Is Dead. The first of Nas's Def Jam releases in December 2006. So the kind of the overriding concept is looking at the state of hip hop. The idea of it being dead and not being as strong as it used to be. It's become over commercialized, and styles are different. And featuring someone like Nas, who was around when a lot of the old golden age style of hip hop was becoming prominent. It's just a perfect person to be able to discuss it. And just overall, just looking at being able to kind of harken back to a lot of the golden age style. The track Where Are They Now, looking at several of those artists from that time, and what has happened to them subsequently, whether they are still rhyming or not. The title track, Hip Hop Is Dead, again just looking at where hip hop stands at that point in time. With will.i.am, who produces a few tracks on the album, including the following track, Who Killed It, which are bits of with Nas taking on sort of the concept of an old 1930s detective, sort of looking at the murder of hip hop. And while it's kind of not hasn't got that conclusive an end, you can kind of see where bits of the ideas about what has happened to hip hop and the quality of it has happened to that point. Nas's detective impression can be a bit grating from times, but at least he's trying something different on the track. Black Republican, the first collaboration between him and Jay-Z on an album together. It's a very momentous occasion, and kind of fittingly has a very triumphant sounding beat to it. Not Going Back, featuring Khalees, looking at the area that he grew up from, and not wanting to go back to his previous lifestyle of just running the streets, getting into trouble, fighting and shooting people, and thing. So as we also have an appearance from West Coast legend Snoop Dogg. I think the first time they've collaborated together for the Scott Storch produced Play On Player. Carry On Tradition, earlier on, was also a Scott Storch produced track, just again allowing Nas to express how he'll continue the good fights in hip hop, as it were. Let There Be Light, produced by Kanye West, featuring Trey Williams on the chorus. Again, a very sort of uplifting sounding track, just to bring more of an optimistic sound to the album. So while there is certainly lots of down moments about the state of the music genre, there's certainly a lot of optimism to be had on there. Nostalgia about how hip hop started and how it became popular. On the track Can't Forget About You, featuring Chrisette Michele, produced by will.i.am again. Looking at moments like Jazzy Jeff and Will Smith, Fresh Prince, winning the first hip hop Grammy. So overall the concept holds up pretty well on the majority of the tracks. The majority of the tracks sounds good, with the different production that you get on there from will.i.am, from Kanye West, from Dr. Dre, who produces Hustlers with The Game and Marshall Ambrosius. A strong album overall. Certainly a bit of a revitalization not only of hip hop but of Nas himself, and proof that the move to Def Jam perhaps overall was a good move. So yeah, certainly one of my favorite albums overall. So the overriding concept really works well. Yeah. Number 4, we have the follow up, Untitled, or Nas, or the initial album title. Which we won't be repeating on here, but obviously the overall theme of the album just being it's kind of an overall look at racism, the position of black people in society, and how people how non-white people overall are treated, and how whether it's different in the year 2008 when this was released to prior history. So it takes on a bit more of a overtly political tone than perhaps any other Nas album, really. Certainly for the entirety of the album. There's moments that are more commercial sounding, such as "Make the World Go Round" featuring Chris Brown and the Game, lead single "Hero" with Kerry Hilson, even though it still fits in with the kind of the overriding theme of the album. Is certainly kind of a more club heavy sounding beat. This is kind of like the strong section of the album to follow, because then we have America, which just looks at America as a whole and the treatment of the people of America, followed by Sly Fox, looking at the Fox News Corporation and its treatments of people, and just the kind of the Big Brother kind of metaphor of watching over people and trying to control them, with a very sort of heavy banging drum beat behind it and guitars, sort of a more rock feel to it. All these 3 tracks back to back, Hero, America, and Sly Fox, are kind of like the strongest section of tracks together, I feel. So then again, the concept kind of varies a little bit in terms of how well it goes forward on tracks. Fried Chicken is an interesting collaboration with Mark Ronson and Busta Rhymes, looking at the sort of the stereotype of black people and fried chicken, how the kind of excess of that, and what effect it can have on the body, despite indulging in it so much and wanting to eat so much of it. It's a very even though it sounds like a weird concept, it's actually done in a very interesting way. Where we get to looking at whether about whether we're the only life in the universe, on the track "We're Not Alone," which is followed by "Black President," which kind of leads into the eventual election of President Barack Obama, the first ever mixed race president of the United States. It wasn't quite time to have a black president, a fully black president apparently, but it's certainly the closest that we've seen whoever going to get at that time. So again, just I got this kind of like optimistic look at the future with the possibility of someone different from the general Caucasian president coming forward. Overall, again, the whole, just looking at the race relations throughout the project. You know, some of it may be a little bit excessive. Um, Perhaps there's a bit too much reference to the transatlantic slave trade. It may be that's sometimes is beaten over the head a little bit too much for the outro of Sly Fox. But overall, it's a very strong album. Great minimalist production throughout a lot of it. And yeah, if you need a mainstream artist to tackle these kind of subjects, Nas is kind of your best bet, really. So yeah, I think a very strong album overall, and great to hear Nas taking on this kind of content throughout an entire project. So number 3, I have God's Son. Now, full disclosure, this is the first Nas album that I was really got into. This is the first around the time I really started finding out about Nas and being able to listen to his music. This is the first album that I properly heard. At the time, I Can was a very big song and a very inspirational song. So I mean, there's a lot of me that wants to place it at number 1. But I know that there's certainly bits of the album that maybe aren't as strong as the albums that we're yet to come to. But overall, I do feel that in terms of songs and contents, there's not a lot on here that's I mean, apart from the kind of the sort of bar-y track Zone Out with Bravehearts, which isn't quite as strong, or Hey Nas with Khalees and Claudette Ortiz. It's a bit of a kind of general ladies track. The rest of the songs are all pretty strong. Last Real Redacted Alive takes a good look at the Jay-Z beef and the effects of that, and his relationship with his mother at the time, just as she was passing away. His mother's death obviously hangs heavily on a couple of tracks on the album. Dance in particular, discusses losing his mother and wanting to still have that time with her. Oludara appears on the end for some instrumentation. The intro track Get Down features a good sort of like bluesy beat to it, using James Brown drum beats for the drums as well, to kind of get that old school sound to it. Following with The Cross, produced by Eminem, which lyrically feels which lyrically is very strong, and Eminem's minimalist beats kind of helps carry the lyrics very forward. I mean, a lot of people always say that Nas is a great lyricist but doesn't have strong production. But I think a lot of this album kind of I enjoy a lot of the beats to this album, and perhaps they're not big heavy hitting tracks like a Dr. Dre, a Timbaland, a Pharrell, or Swiss Beats or whatever, but you don't need those kind of beats overpowering Nas's lyricism. And all the songs on here sound smooth enough to be able to carry Nas's voice without sounding too dull or anything. So I think it all works really well. Warrior Song, the collaboration with Alicia Keys, was really, it's really good. The collaboration, the posthumous collaboration with Tupac, Thug's Mansion finds its way on here as well. It's a welcome addition. Even though we get it on, this is kind of an altered version where we get more of Nas as well, so it kind of makes more sense to place it on the album. The majority of the tracks on here I really, really do enjoy. So it's all fairly introspective. There's nothing on here that's like too unnecessarily hardcore or anything like that. So one of my favorite albums of all time. It's in the top three. Tempted to put it higher. I mean, this top three kind of they're all kind of on par for me in a way. But this is a very important album to me growing up, and still, I feel a lot. I feel a very personal attachment to the album as a whole. So number 3. Number 2, Illmatic. Sorry, didn't put it number 1. I will explain. It is a very strong album. Certainly lyrically, it's one of Nas's strongest efforts. If not his strongest in terms of just like bar from bar altogether. The production from DJ Premier, Large Professor, Q-Tip, LES all works very well. It keeps that sort of early 90s sounds, New York sounds going strong. Basically, the main thing is it's just like it always felt more like a demo than an actual fully fleshed out album. It's only sort of it's 10 tracks, one of which is the intro, which isn't actually a song. So Halftime also, which appears halfway through the album, is a bit of a weaker song that I don't feel is as strong as the other tracks on there. But still, New York State of Mind is one of the greatest openers of any album at all. With Nas lyricism just practically jumping off the beats throughout the extended verses. Life's a Bitch, great collaboration between him and AZ. Just looking at life and at young life. And how the world is. The World Is Yours, following that as well. One Love, looking at his friends in prison. Memory Lane, just reflecting and reminiscing on his past. So I mean, overall, it is a strong album. It's certainly deserving of its legacy and what it did for hip hop then and how it's affected hip hop for the future and Nas's career for the future. I just feel that it needed that bit more to it to make it a fully fleshed out album, which unfortunately it doesn't have. Even sort of like the additions of this is the 10-year edition. There's been the 20-year edition as well, which has extra bonus tracks as well. Those bonus tracks just end up kind of being remixes of things which aren't necessarily that important, but still really classic, great lyricism, great sound, but not my personal favourites overall. That is going to go to It Was Written. So, It Was Written, released in July 1996, 2 years after the Illmatic debut. And while there's a bit more of a overriding mafioso, lavish sound to it, and maybe the lyricism is taken down a little bit from the overall kind of street lyricism of Illmatic. As an overall project, I just feel that this is stronger. There's more to it. The message, the kind of opening track with its Sting sample is, maybe not quite as lyrical as New York Slayer Mind, but still a very, very strong intro, which follows a very similar structure of two extended verses with a sample scratched chorus. Street Dreams, the original version, I think on the 25th anniversary, I think the remix with R. Kelly's on there as well. But the initial version with the rewrite of the Eurythmics chorus, works well enough, even though it's a bit more of a commercial sounding track. We then follow on with I Gave You Power, one of Nas's best concept tracks, speaking from the perspective of a gun, with a very different DJ Premier production, which isn't as heavily sample driven or boom bap as a lot of DJ Premier's stuff quite often is. But it's also quite a minimalist track that never particularly changes the beat and doesn't necessarily have to. Just that continuous loop helping Nas's vocals go along again helps it. Nas Is Coming, produced by Dr. Dre, sort of an East Coast and West Coast collaboration. Has Dre's production is haunting enough and keeps Nas going throughout it. Follow this with Affirmative Action, the formation of the firm, where all of Nas, AZ, Cormega, and Foxy Brown have really great verses. Just hearing them go bar for bar together. Foxy Brown's mathematics aside, it all works, feeds together really well. The setup, just sort of a street, a mafioso street tale, Black Girl Lost, which perhaps is a bit of a dated idea when you look at how women's sexuality has come along since these times, but for the times, for 1996, it was a different idea at least, and at least had a bit of an interesting look at at stripper culture, how women who perhaps didn't have anything else for their lives had to get into it when they could have perhaps gone into other situations had their circumstances been different. Casey of Jodeci appears for the chorus, for background vocals in the actual chorus. Nas actually does the majority of the chorus himself, and sounds decent enough on it for someone who's not a particularly good singer. He does actually carry the chorus fairly well. And so then after that we get appearances from Mobb Deep, and finally, in terms of non-bonus tracks, If I Ruled the World, featuring Lauryn Hill, one of definitely the standout tracks of the album, which features an overall kind of perhaps glitzy sound, but still the concepts of looking at how the world could be changed to be better, more of a utopia in Nas's eyes. So, it's one of Nas's strongest overall songs, and a great way to sort of end off the album, if you don't include the Silent Murder bonus track and other bonus tracks that have been added since. I say overall, I think some of Nas's strongest sounding tracks are on here. It has a very cinematic sound throughout the album, which carries the majority of the tracks through. and it has more of a diversity that was lacking on Illmatic to make this, again, it's just a more fully fleshed out project, and again, one of my favorite overall hip hop albums. So that's why I'm placing this at number one. Say, overall discography, while patchy in some places, is still one of the strongest hip hop discographies ever. I mean, any one of that, top 5 or 6, I could easily make a claim for being number one. But yeah, that's my rankings as it stands. So I hope to see you again soon for more.